Everyone, welcome to the student interview that we're going to be having. This is with one of the highest earning students, mashallah, that we've had in the program. And obviously, as all of you know, we're SSS University. We've been doing this since 2020. So we have had literally some students since that time as well, right? So we're just going to ask about his experience. I've got quite a few questions to ask him in the interview. I would implore everyone to keep their mics on mute and not to shout out or anything. If you do have any questions, we will open up the floor at the end of the interview. Yeah, so we'll open up the floor at the end of the interview if you have any questions. And we'll take those questions through the Zoom chat. Okay, so I will be looking at that. I will be vigilant there after the interview is done. The interview should probably take around 30 minutes. I don't see it going too more than that or anything. And yeah, so just benefit as much as possible, inshallah. Respect our guest here as well, and then we will open up the floor for questions. So let me just get the questions up. Aqib, you ready?
Absolutely, I'm ready. And Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Pleasure to meet you all.
Thanks, salam wa rahmatullah. All right, bro. So, Aqib, when did you join the program?
I was your second batch of mentees. So I would say, was it been 3 years now? Something along those lines?
3 years, yeah, mashallah, 3 years. So 2020 then, yeah?
Yeah, 2020 it was, yeah. As COVID hit, the world changed, and subsequently came across your program and my life changed as well.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Okay, brilliant, brilliant. So, Aqib, could you just give us and the audience here a brief background about yourself? Just introduce yourself, what you were doing before you heard about closing and started closing and came onto my program. And yeah, just a bit about how your life was back then, and perhaps where were you even looking into online opportunities beforehand? What was it all like financially for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So previously I was a student studying, living the student life. Didn't really have my eye on any online opportunities or any opportunities other than what would happen after graduating. That was the only career path for me. It was okay, graduate, get a job, work your way up the ladder. That was it. There was no broader thinking as opposed to that until I came across your mentorship program. And so from then, my career path has taken a massive change in terms of what I thought it would be prior to 2020 and how it's actually played out from 2020 till now.
Okay, brilliant. And what was your study?
Chemical engineering.
And what did you see for yourself studying chemical engineering, perhaps then graduating, then getting into a job? What would be the end goal in chemical engineering for you?
So becoming an engineer, becoming chartered, roughly takes about 5 years or so. Decent salary. Engineers typically have very good salaries, as we all know. But it takes a little while to work your way up the corporate ladder, as with most careers that stem from graduating or university. And so, I mean, I was okay with that because I didn't know any better. I thought, okay, that's pretty much it. But in hindsight, looking back, and some of my colleagues who continued down that path, they're still working their way up that ladder. They're still very much in that corporate role, working in industry, taking a couple of years to build up their experience before they get those higher paid roles.
And in terms of higher paid roles, what kind of salary would they be commanding after being chartered?
50, 75-ish, around that range.
Okay, 50, 75-ish. So
Yeah,
probably around 3 to 4K take home pay after tax.
correct. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Okay, cool. So what made you take the chance of working with us then?
It was a different world. It was a world of uncertainty. It was COVID had just hit March 2020. I believe I began your program Ramadan that year. I started in Ramadan. So it must have been sort of midsummer. So COVID was full-fledged. The world was in lockdown. Travel was restricted. Everything was just in chaos. I came across your opportunity and it provided some sort of level-headedness, some calmness to the chaos that the world was currently in. And I thought, okay, let's give this a shot. This is different to what I've experienced. This is different to anything that I know. But let's give it a shot.
Okay. And what did you know about closing before you came in?
Nothing. Simple.
Fair enough.
Nothing.
Okay. So in terms of the closing altogether, now that you've been in it for quite a few years, how would you describe closing to someone who's never heard of it before?
Um, it's a very flexible role where you're able to work from the comfort of your own home, comfort of the hours that you choose, time zone that you choose, and you're able to create an income where I didn't even know an opportunity previously lay.
Hmm, hmm. And based on your experience as well, could you share some insights of the opportunities within the industry? Because I know a lot of people, before they come on, they're a bit skeptical. Are there many business owners looking for closers?
Mhm.
What's the the earning potential like? Could you just give us a bit of a background of that?
Absolutely. I mean, so I've strictly worked in the e-commerce side of things, Amazon, FBA, drop shipping, um, that kind of thing. That's really been where my specialty has been throughout the last 3 years. So I can only really speak to that industry. I haven't really looked or ventured out of that industry much. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in that industry. Typical pay ranges from, I mean, it's your experience and how good you are as a closer really defines how much you're going to be earning. So you have people earning sort of 1 to 2 thousand on a monthly basis, and then you have people earning 20K plus on a monthly basis as well. It really does vary depending on your experience, depending on how good you are as a closer.
Hmm, hmm. And in terms of just to expand a bit upon what Akib is saying, so whenever you go into closing, ideally what we would recommend is going into the online education industry and closing for businesses within that. And ever since COVID, ever since the technology and growth of all the technology supporting online education, more and more industry experts and businesses have realized that, there's a huge opportunity to teach what we already know to people so that they can get a quicker transformation. They can earn more money in a quick amount of space of time rather than having to rely on the traditional university route or apprenticeship, etc., where you spend 27K, perhaps get in debt, spend 3+ years learning a particular skill, only to then land a job that you're not entirely happy with or doesn't really pay as much as you want. So now what people are doing is that they are seeing this and they are paying for transformational coaching programs where they can earn a lot of money within a shorter space of time. So within a few months as opposed to a few years. And this is what the online education industry is bringing. And this is why it's one of the fastest online growing industries within the past 10 years. And this is also why they these industry experts are actually charging high ticket for it, right? And then this is how these jobs in the closer world are actually created. So that's just a bit of a background there. So in terms of landing your first closing gig, or even subsequent ones as well, Akib, what steps did you take, and how was that experience for you?
So the first gig, I was very fortunate because I was, like I said, you from your second batch of mentees, and you referred me that first opportunity that I had, which was the gateway for me into this closing world. So that's how I got the first one. Subsequent opportunities has been from people I know, networking, and as you obviously land that first gig, you build up more connections within the industry that, of course, help you in turn when you're looking for a second, third, or fourth gig.
Hmm, hmm. So let's do kind of like a timeline thing here. So you joined Ramadan 2020. What month was that? Was that like uh July or something, or August,
Yeah,
or
July, August time, I believe it was.
around, yeah, around the summer? Okay. So you joined August 2020, let's say. You went through the coaching program. How long was the coaching program? That was a couple of months, wasn't it?
I'd finished the coaching program by August, I believe it was.
So let's talk a bit about the coaching program and then we'll move on to the job. So in terms
Mhm.
of the coaching program, what was your experience with that? Obviously, you've never heard of closing before. You're a
Yeah.
university student studying chemical engineering, and that was kind of the main thing you were looking to in terms of earning an income when you're older. So what did that look like for you in terms of learning sales, closing, networking with business owners, etc.?
It was a new world that I'd never experienced before. Like I said, I mean, I had no idea that something like this existed. But the program itself was very well thought out. It was aimed at people like me who had no experience in this industry before. And so starting from the absolute basics of what is a closer, um, going into sort of the details of what's required to become a closer, teaching you along the way, mentoring you. There was some hand holding. There was showing us the ropes. We also had one of Schwab's assistants who would work with us in their free time as well. So that was very, very beneficial. But it was essentially going from 0 to 100 when it comes to not having any knowledge of closing and then getting up to a position where you're able to land a closing gig, along with sort of mindset kind of training as well, which is very important within the role of closing.
Mm. And the learning about mindset, because I know we spent the first couple of weeks on that. What were the major shifts in mindset that you had throughout the program first, and then how it applied to you in the real world of closing in business?
Keeping a positive mindset. There's not really many hurdles that I faced prior to landing this gig because I'd never actually worked in a proper sort of role before, worked in a big company before. But once you start working in a big company, you have good days, you have bad days, as you do with any job that you're doing. And so that mindset shift was staying positive constantly, no matter what's happening around you, staying positive, being able to bring an upbeat attitude onto every phone call, regardless of how positive or negative the previous one was. It was things like that which just help on a day-to-day basis when you're doing the same job on a day-to-day basis as well.
Mm. And in terms of the skill itself with closing, because now what we do in the program, it's much more structured to what we had before. So now what we do is we first identify the role someone wants to go into, whether it's a setter or closer, or even a social seller, which is something a bit different than closing and sales. And then we teach them a bit about mindset, and then we teach them the skill, and then we teach them how to brand and network with business owners to land those interviews, right? So in terms of the skill development area of things, learning, closing, practicing the role plays, how did that all go for you? And how long would you say you spent on it every day to learn the skill? And then in eventuality, altogether, after a certain amount of days, how long was that amount of time until you actually learned that skill and you were confident to outreach to business owners or to land a gig?
Absolutely. It was 2 months start to finish the mentorship program. I would say I put about 10 to 15 hours in on a weekly basis. So not a crazy amount of hours, but it definitely requires some sort of commitment at the same time. Role play, that was a combination of going over the material, going over the course structure, contact time with Shuaib, and role playing in my spare time as well with my colleagues and peers.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. And in terms of so after those 2 months, you found a gig. Um, Tell us about your first gig. How did that all go? What were your thoughts getting into it, going on that first ever call that you've had? Tell us a bit about that experience.
Felt natural. I feel as though the mentorship program set me up very well for, you could say, what the real world of closing was like. Because when you're in the mentorship program, you're in almost a bubble of the group that you're training with, you're working with, that kind of thing. And then you're going into your first role afterwards, which can be daunting if you're not set up correctly. But I feel as though the mentorship program set me up correctly. So it was a seamless transition from that into the first role. First role went very well. Yeah, began creating a very decent income for myself almost immediately.
And what does it look like in terms of getting into the first role? Like, what did you experience? Were there, a whole load of sales meetings? Were there training on the product and services? How did they prep you to become a good closer on the call?
Yeah, I mean, so I can attest to this due to having 3 roles over the last 3 years. Typically, it takes between 1 to 2 weeks to get trained up, no matter what role you're at. 1 to 2 weeks. That involves going over the onboarding structure for that particular company that you're going to work with, whether it be closer, setter, whatever it may be. You go over their structure. Most companies will have a structure in place for new employees. And then you're role playing, you're going through things, you're having a little practice role play with your superior as well. And then if you pass that, you're essentially part of the company. So that's typically what it looked like there as well.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. And then tell us a bit about the earnings that you had within the first few months of that particular first gig that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was low end five figures initially, and then went on to sort of higher end five figures on a monthly basis. So a few £1,000s a month for the first few months. And then later on, as I became more experienced and more senior in the company, it was consistently sort of 10K plus a month.
10K plus one. So that's obviously a huge amount of money, especially for someone who, at that time, how old were you? Was it 22, 23 or?
3 years ago, 28 now, so about 25.
Okay, 25,
26.
25.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously that's a huge amount of money for someone 25 years old to be earning, right?
Mhm.
Especially from an entirely new field in their perspective as well. So how did like when you earn that type of big money? I mean, I know that a few thousand can be okay, yeah, that's quite good. But 10,000, when you earn that, like what were your thoughts?
This is amazing. Let's carry on doing it. It was, I want more.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the attitude it was. It was, okay, this is awesome.
Mm,
Let's see how far I can push the boat out here.
mm. And how far did you push the boat? What would you say was the highest amount that you earned in a month?
20K a month.
20K, mashallah,
Mm.
mashallah. May Allah bless that. And what was the lowest that you earned throughout your entire 3 years experience?
Um, I can't remember exactly. I, I pay more attention to the higher figures and the lower figures.
Mm,
If being in between roles counts, then there's been a month or two that I haven't earned anything.
mhm.
But it all averages out if you compare a 20K month to a month where you're not earning anything. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but that
So
was being in between roles. That was, so I don't know if that counts or not.
yeah, I mean, ideally it wouldn't count because then you're in between, you're looking for another role, maybe
Yeah,
purposefully because you know you have that money in the back, you don't mind having a few months off, right?
yeah.
Um, but there is a question we have from quite a few people that are looking to get into this. How stable and sustainable is this type of career, would you say?
It is quite a sustainable career simply because if you're doing your job correctly, people want to keep you around. There's no question about that. As with most roles or most career paths, if you're not doing a good job, I mean, your employer will notice that and not want you in that company any longer. If you're trying hard, you're working hard, you're constantly improving yourself, you're working on your mindset, you're working on your skills as a closer, it's a very sustainable role.
Brilliant, brilliant. And how much in terms of sales revenue altogether from start to now have you closed, would you say?
Yeah, about 5 million.
5 million. I wrote on the advertisement 1 million. I said 1 million plus because I wasn't sure if the 2 mil plus was hit. But mashallah,
Yeah,
that's brilliant. That's brilliant. 5 mil.
1
And
million was hit in my first year. Less than, I think it was 11 months in, and I hit 1 million.
yeah, that's amazing, subhanAllah. That's more than me when I started, definitely, right? When I started, it was nowhere even near a million. You know, I would dream about hitting a million. Mashallah, good, good. And in terms of the commissions altogether, would you be
Mhm.
okay in sharing how much you've earned since you've started?
I'll leave it at six figures plus.
Leave it at six figures plus. Fair enough,
That's
fair enough.
British, great British pounds. That is, as great
Pounds,
as they
yes.
are.
Good, good, good,
Yes.
good. Perfect, perfect. So 6 figures closed, 7 figures sales revenue. Normally, just for everyone here, it's normally like a 10% commission that you earn from these opportunities, right? Um, and in terms of your second gig,
Mhm.
so you transitioned from the first one to the second one. Um, how did you go and find that gig? Because I know you had to network a bit for that. So if you
Yeah.
could, because I know a lot of people here, they're mainly worried about, okay, I don't have an idea of how to network with businesses. How does it all work?
Honestly, it was a person I knew from the first gig that we transitioned from that together as a team into the second gig. So there was five of us, group of Muslims. It was, we knew each other quite well. We had a good bond with each other, and we transitioned from that first role to the second role together.
Brilliant, brilliant. So this is a very important thing that Akib has just mentioned, especially for the students here as well. is to always have a good connection with fellow closers and setters, right? Because if they move to another role and you know them quite well, they can get you into that role as well. So that's very important. So make sure you always you never burn bridges with other people. And likewise with business owners as well, it goes the same. Okay, brilliant, brilliant. So let me just see. So have you tried anything else other than closing within these past 3 years?
No.
No? Okay. That, that was just a side question, just in case you had, just to compare it to closing. But that's fine. Okay, cool. You also was able to purchase one of the cars that you really liked, right? So
Mhm.
how was that experience, being able to earn enough money to actually buy outright a car that you really want and and kit it up how you want, etc. You
It
want to
was
share a bit
amazing,
about that?
really. It was amazing, really, because the day and age we live in at this moment, and I've got nothing against this, to each their own. It's a world where everyone around me, my age group, they have decent cars, 28 years old. But most of them are financed. That's the world we live in at the moment. Majority of cars we see on the street and everything is all financed, which has its own contradictions. But Alhamdulillah, through the ability of meeting Shuaib and sort of learning what I learned, getting into the role that I did and earning the money that I did, I was able to purchase the car that I wanted without having to get into finance interest and actually purchase a car outright. So it was lovely. I wouldn't have purchased it any other way.
Mm, brilliant, brilliant. And in terms of closing itself, how long did it take you to earn your first 10K a month? So since you started learning from the program.
I'd say I started in August, so August, September, October, November, December was my first 10K month.
So 5 months, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. 5 months until 10K a month. Okay. And in terms of your approach of closing sales,
Mhm,
I know, for example, on the first gig that you're in, there was a large team of closers.
mhm.
Some were earning quite well, like you were, mashallah, and some weren't doing as well as you were. Could you let us know what the main difference is between an A player closer and a closer that just kind of gets by within the company, let's say?
Most roles will have their own scripts they want you to follow. Goes without saying. If they're employing you to be part of their business, they're going to want you to follow a template that's already worked for them in the past, which there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. However, you need to be able to add your own twist onto things, your own personality. You need to be able to bring that out on the calls, show these clients that you're speaking to this personality, and that will shine through. Because at the end of the day, we're speaking to human beings on the phone every day. These human beings want a connection, they want interaction with other human beings in order for them to spend their hard earned money. So you need to bring your personality onto every single call. You need to bring energy onto every single call in order for them to get, in order for you to get them to spend their money.
Hmm. And what was the highest ticket package that you closed in your career so far?
70K.
70K. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
And is it more difficult to close something that's, let's say 70K as opposed to, let's say 700 or 1000?
Oh, I preferred the higher ticket packages. 100% all day. I'd take the higher ticket packages.
Why is that? Would you say it's easier to close or harder to close or?
It suited my personality. That's why. Everyone has a different personality, the way they speak, um, the nature of their tonality and all that stuff. My personality just fit very well with those high ticket opportunities and the type of clientele that I was speaking to as a result of that.
Hmm. And let's go to the opposite route now. So we asked you what kind of made you successful in closing within the company you were in. Did you, throughout these 3 years, experience any setbacks or challenges along the way? And if so, what were they and how did you overcome them?
I'm a very reserved person. I'm very, very introverted. I won't speak unless spoken to. Um, I have no problem speaking and I have confidence in myself to speak. That's never been an issue. But it's very much been a case of me having to come out of my shell a little bit and just get my voice heard a little bit more, as opposed to just speaking when spoken to. That's how you get noticed in a company. That's how you get better roles, and your managers sort of notice, okay, this person's in the company. Let me give them some extra role play time or some extra care and attention, that kind of thing. that's something I never used to do initially, and it's something I had to grow into.
So you're saying that when you joined the companies initially, you were a bit reserved, you kind of kept to yourself, just closing the calls. But then to actually show your value and show your worth a bit more, rather than just closing, you would actually be involved in, actively helping the company, perhaps with the sales training materials, the role play calls within the company, right?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Brilliant. Brilliant. Um, okay, cool. And in terms of what qualities do you think would be essential for success as a remote closer through your experience? So they can be mindset ones, they can be skill-based ones, personality ones. What kind of qualities would you think?
Um, Confidence in yourself, being well spoken, um, calm and collected as well. Some people will get on the call and try to rattle you a little bit. Don't let it affect you. Don't be affected by what other people think. You have a role to do. Execute your role to the best of your ability, no matter what. Um, yeah, I would say those are the key things. Confidence. Confidence is above all probably the best quality you could have as a closer.
Hmm,
And
brilliant.
that's not to say you need to have confidence, but the ability to fake it until you make it is also extremely powerful. And confidence is something you can absolutely fake.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And in terms of now, when some people would go and earn, 10K plus a month, let's say, some people then would perhaps become a bit complacent, perhaps
Mhm.
relax, perhaps would be a bit lazy, buy a few things and kind of chill out in that way. How do you maintain motivation, especially working from home as well, and stay focused, especially during those periods where perhaps you are at your highest in the career?
Oh, I have become complacent sometimes. It absolutely does have an effect on your desire to get up and continue working as hard as you were before you were earning that kind of money. Having a good mentor is also very important. Having someone that keeps you on track, having a good circle of people around you is very important. And you just keep pushing yourself through that, really.
Mhm,
If you
mhm.
don't have those other things in place in your life, then absolutely complacency will come in.
And let's say, was there a time in your 3 years as a closer where you experienced quite a lot of rejections in sales or perhaps low sales numbers in the month? If so, how did you overcome that?
I believe every closer has faced that no matter how good you are. You will always go through dips as a closer. It's the nature of the role. Sometimes it will be things out of your control that are causing that. Sometimes it will be things in your control. And it's a matter of committing time towards listening to your call recordings, role playing, continuing to do what you were taught in Schwab's mentorship program, and going back to basics sometimes to reassess exactly what needs to be done to get out of this dip that you're currently in.
Hmm. And in terms of business owners and working with business owners,
Mhm.
do you perhaps have any recommendations or ideas on what types of businesses to go with? I know you're already in the e-commerce world, but in
Yeah,
terms of their, their status, their following, the number of leads they're giving, etc., so that you can earn high amounts.
not necessarily. No, I mean, being in the role that I'm in, um, I mean, if you want me to recommend my role, we're not currently hiring. That's an issue. Um, but the e-commerce world as a whole, that sort of industry, that's something that I would definitely recommend. That's the one I've been in since 2020.
Mhm. And there's definitely been a surge of different coaches, consultants, done for you services within that particular role, within that particular industry as well. So that is a
Yeah.
good industry to go into: e-commerce, Amazon FBA, drop shipping, etc. Okay, brilliant. What would you say are some disadvantages of working remotely as a closer? So we've talked about all the positive stuff, all the nice stuff. Let's talk about the reality, perhaps a bit the negative stuff that no one knows about.
You don't meet anyone in person. You don't really network with people in your area, make too many friends in person, that kind of thing that you're going to meet up with. You can, if you go out of your way, absolutely. There's nothing stopping you, especially if you're living in the same country as those people. Being introverted, not something that interests me though. Um, you stay inside, you stay at home most of the day. which again isn't a bad thing for most people, but it's nice to get out and about, change your environment sometimes as well. Some closers combat that by hiring an office space near them and sort of working the office space. So it's like they're still going to work and they have a separate home and work environment. That's never been something that's fazed me. I work from my attic, so it's not an issue. I have my own office space in the attic. I'm struggling to find many other negatives really. It's alhamdulillah, so it's a very positive thing to be doing.
Hmm. And apart from the earnings and being able to work from home on halal opportunities, apart from that, what other pros or advantages would you say there are to closing that maybe aren't as discussed?
Um, I'm not sure really. I mean, the flexibility of it and the income is the two main things really. You have flexibility and you have income. I mean, those are the two complaints that most people have with any job.
Hmm. And what kind of advice would you give to someone who perhaps they're in a job, they're in a 9 to 5 job, they don't really like it, they want to move into closing? But what kind of advice would you give to them to succeed as soon as possible? Because I know initially when you started, you did put in quite a few hours as well into your job as well. Um, so what general advice would you give to someone who wants to get into closing?
Be committed. Um, that doesn't mean you have to commit every second of every day to this opportunity, this mentorship program, or even learning it, or even once you get your first role, actually being a closer and taking calls 24/7. But be committed. Spend your time thinking about this, thinking about how you can be better. Um, Spend your time continuously role playing and going over your script and getting confidence in what you're doing here as a job. And you just fully commit and leap headfirst into this opportunity because it is going to be what you make it at the end of the day. If you treat it as like a little side hustle, then it will be a little side hustle. It will bring you any more income than what a side hustle can bring you. If you go into it with a mindset that this could be life changing for you, then it will absolutely be life changing for you.
I agree. I agree. And what advice would you give to anyone who's perhaps sitting on the fence? You know, maybe they've seen me, they've seen my videos, they've seen some success stories, right? And they're just like, you know what, I'm just not too sure. Should I go into this or should I just stay in my job? What advice would you give to them?
How long have you been on the fence? Because fences are not comfortable to sit on, either here or there. That's where you want to be. And I took that step. I can only attest to what I did. I took that step. I joined Shreve's mentorship program. And here we are 3 years later, and Shreve's introducing me by saying I'm one of his best mentees that he's had. So alhamdulillah, it's been a brilliant step that I took. I was on the fence for a short while as well. I'm glad I got off the fence. I'm glad I took Shreve's mentorship program, and alhamdulillah for everything that happened from that point onwards.
Brilliant, brilliant. And lastly, just in a few words, well, actually, let's do another question that's literally just been asked. I think this is a pretty good question. Do you see closing as a lifelong career? Would you be happy doing this until your retirement?
It's something that I could absolutely do until retirement because it there's no negative impact of doing it for a long amount of time.
Mhm.
There's no impact it has on the body, your mind, or soul for that matter. It's very much something that you can continuously improve at, and just if you get well, if a role becomes mundane for you, you're able to switch roles into another role. That's the brilliance of having experience within this industry as well. So if I was getting to a point where I was feeling a little bit bored or wanted to change, I wouldn't need to change job roles. I would just change the industry that I'm working in.
Mhm, mhm. And lastly, just in a few words, or even one word if you want, how would you sum up the training and what it's allowed you to do?
The training with yourself has allowed me to go into an opportunity that I previously never knew existed and ultimately change my life.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant, mashallah. Um, yeah, that was beautiful. That was beautiful, mashallah. Throughout the throughout the answers you were giving us, you know, I always had a big smile on my face. I'm, you know, very proud of you as a student as well, mashallah. You have worked very, very hard. And for those who don't know, you know, this brother in his first few months in the gig, he was working probably the hardest out of all of my students, right? And this is really what it comes down to, right? It's because it's not just about talent or, gift of the gab, or, you know, some of you, might have learned that, he's very well spoken, mashallah, right? But it's not just about that. It's about, okay, putting in that effort, taking that risk, doing what you have to do to get to where you need to get to, and not giving up on the way. That's literally what it's about. If you do that, you're literally 60, 70% of the way there, right? And then as well as what Akib said, if you have that positive mindset and that positive frame of mind, that even if something hits you, even if you get rejected by a business owner, or they don't allow you to come on, or you didn't make a sale, even though you thought you were going to make that sale, just don't let it affect you. Just carry on, right? And then, because the journey of, as that saying goes, the journey of 1,000 steps or 1,000 miles begins with the first step, right? So you just keep taking those steps, keep enjoying the process, and then you will get there, inshallah. So I personally believe that a lot of people, the reason why they're not as successful is not because they don't have the potential to do this. Everyone has the potential to do this. It's really just their own internal conflict within their mind that's holding them back. And this is why it's very important to have mentorship, to have coaches that can take you from your current level of thinking to a higher level of thinking, and walk you through all of the setbacks that you could land on the way as well. Okay, so what we'll do now, Akib, if it's okay with you, probably just next 5-10 minutes maybe, we'll open the floor for questions. If you have any questions, just write it in the Zoom chat. Keep your mic on mute, because we have this on recording as well. I think there are some questions here. So what was Brother Akib earning in between August to December, if you can share that? So I think this is in reference to, when you first started, you mentioned like a few thousand. How much was it specifically? Like 2-3K or something? Or
Between 3K and that 10K amount. The minimum was 3K.
minimum was 3K. Okay, there you have it. That's even better. Okay, next question. The 70K ticket sales, was that B2B or B2C?
B2C.
B2C, yeah. Okay, we've answered that one. Any other questions? Keep them coming, by the way, because he needs to go soon as well.
Shoaib is my mentor now and has been for the last 3 years.
Yeah, so he does still ask me questions here and there through WhatsApp. So, I just help wherever needed, really. Well, mashallah, he's very intelligent. He doesn't really need too much. He'll just get on with it and just do it, mashallah. And then before you know it, 5 million closed. Okay, what are the signs of a good gig when applying? What would you say to that?
References are the best thing. When you're first in the industry, obviously you don't have too many references, too many contacts in the industry. Speaking from experience, you want to speak to people who are currently working that role. Some companies will make themselves out to be a little bit better than they actually are. That's something that with experience you will identify sort of exactly what their figures are. For example, they'll have one good month and they'll advertise their job role as closers earning 10K a month consistently, when in reality they had 1 month where one closer earned 10K. So when you get on the call with these people who have the opportunities, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Ask them the kinds of questions. How many closes do you have? On average, how much are they earning on a monthly basis? You don't just want their high figure outliers. You want their averages across the last year in order to really break down and see whether this role fits or suits what you're looking for. So don't be afraid to ask questions when you're on that interview with these opportunities.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's very, very good advice. You are, you know, you're basically a closer, right? So you have to see if this gig is good for you so that you can close as much as possible. So you should be asking those questions as well. Absolutely. Let's see. Any other questions? How many hours do you work in a week typically?
Um, Between 30 to 40 hours on a weekly basis on average.
So around 8 a day for 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay. And within those hours, how many calls show up? So let's say you booked yourself out for 8 calls a day, all within an hour slot. How many would show up?
So with my second gig, it was, oh, let's go. First gig was about 60% show rate. Second gig was about 90% show rate. This gig at the moment is about a 50% show rate.
And what would you do? Let's say if people didn't really show up, what would you do in between then? Would you hone in on your skills, or would you just relax and go out for a walk or something? Or what would you do?
Combination of both. Sometimes it's going out for a walk, sometimes it's going gym, sometimes it's gaming, watching a TV series, honing in your skills. You have that opportunity free, and you can make that opportunity what you want it to be. So yes, you can work on your skills. Sometimes naturally, as humans, we do get a bit lazy, and we're not always working on our skills. So
Hmm. And in terms of, this is just another question based on, I know you mentioned you're an introvert. A lot of people who are introverts, and these are perhaps the majority of people that apply as a, wanting to get into the closing industry, they kind
mhm.
of exclude themselves from being a closer because they think they're an introvert and that they won't be as good as a closer. On your
Mhm.
team, throughout your experience in whichever gigs, how many people would you say were actually introverts, and how many people would you say were actually extroverts? Was there a good mix of them?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a fair few introverts, and you don't figure that out until you get to know them a little bit more closer. I mean, most people wouldn't be able to figure out that I'm an introvert.
Yeah, yeah. And even I was an introvert when I started. When I was in the pharmacy, customers complaining about their prescriptions, I was afraid to pick up the phone to the GP and tell him, "Look, you're wrong," basically. So, from doing that to handling objections that business owners are giving me, it's a huge development that you undergo. And even if you are an introvert now, it doesn't mean that's how you're going to be for the rest of your life, right? Because in certain situations, and this is all part of personal development, Myers-Briggs, whatever you go into, this is what they all say. In certain situations, you will always develop, and you can be an extrovert in certain situations and lean into being an introvert in certain situations as well. So, in terms of that, I wouldn't worry too much, to be honest. Introverts are very good with listening and building empathy and rapport with the particular person they're speaking to as well. So, they have their pros too. Um, I think there's another question here. Did you ever get a base salary?
No.
No, this is all commission only. The base salary is only with appointment setting, because you're doing a bit more admin work and it's not just taking calls, right? But what if you don't have the gift of the gab? You're not well spoken, etc.
I mean, I never really considered myself someone who had the gift of the gab. I guess the way I talk now and the confidence I have is through my experience over the last 3 years. Prior to this, it was never something that I expressed too much. That getting on camera, that talking kind of element of things, it's never something I really did prior to this. So, I mean, if you have it, alhamdulillah, that's a good thing. If you don't have it, it's something you can work on.
Exactly. Yeah. With anything that you don't have now, you have to develop yourself. That's just how it is. No one is built with absolutely every skill inside of them, right? Now you have the potential to do anything, but you just have to develop it, whatever it is. Yeah. Even if you have some weaknesses, those can easily be developed, right? When I first started, I used to stutter a lot. Now I don't stutter as much, right? And imagine someone stuttering, closing 100K deals. It just doesn't make sense normally, right? But this is how it happened, just through developing as a closer, asking the right questions, putting in the reps, the practice, etc. Have you ever had a gig? So this is another kind of perhaps assumption of, when people come into the closing world. Have you ever had a gig where they didn't pay you? No, I think it's
No,
frozen a bit.
never.
Okay, never. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that doesn't really happen. To be honest, if you're a closer and you're making good money for the business, are they really gonna try and do one over just to get some money? No, they're gonna keep you on. It's in the business's best interest, rather than them having to go and find out of another 100 applicants who would be the best one again, and then do them over again, and then repeat the process. It's just not really. It's not in the industry. That doesn't really happen. It perhaps would happen to someone who's like, if you're working with a startup and they've never been with a closer before, maybe. But again, you're not even supposed to go with those businesses anyway. Um, okay. So do you pick your own hours, or is it set for you?
Pick my own hours.
You pick your own hours. Perfect. Um, how did you build your confidence? You were mentioning about confidence and building it. How did you build it?
Various things outside of closing helped my confidence as well. Going to the gym, working on myself physically has helped with my personal journey with confidence. Um, confidence is very much a journey for each individual. It's different things that we sort of pull our confidence from depending on who we are as a person. So I feel as though that's a very individual question to ask. Me personally, it was going to the gym, feeling better about myself. That kind of thing really helped me with my confidence more so than actually sitting there and working through something or something along those lines.
Perfect. Are your gigs UK based or are they international?
US, UK. That's my
US,
three
US, and UK.
gigs.
Those are the
Yeah.
3 gigs. Okay.
Yeah.
What are the practical steps to network so you can keep having opportunities available? So let's say if you wanted to get out of the current opportunity that you're in, do you have something set up for next? And if so, how would you go about doing that?
That would be starting a new journey, really. It would be, what industry do you want to go into? Do you know anyone in that industry already? If not, start getting integrated within that industry, I guess. My networking has been from my peers and sort of colleagues that I work with. That's been the extent of my networking. I can't really speak to having to network outside of peers and colleagues.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there then, inshallah. I think that's all the questions as well. Okay, Jazakumullah khairan for your time. Really appreciate it, bro. Very proud of your success to date, mashallah. Keep it up. May Allah bless your income and allow you to go very far in this industry. I mean, okay. So
Jazakallah khair as well for everything you've done, this opportunity and the opportunity to speak to everyone. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.